everybody? Hi. How y'all feeling? Good words there. I have to say to Scott, I've never seen more pictures of myself at a visit to a school. I even get to present with myself. So thank you for that. So we've got just about an hour, and I thought I would take you on a little bit of a journey around the work that we do in schools around the world. And I feel very lucky to have traveled to, dozens of countries to think about how to do this work, not only here in the United States, but in other cultures as well. And so let's just jump in with the first tool. Some of you may be familiar with this if you have read my previous work or you've seen the work that we do. It's called the mood meter, and it is a very simple but deceptive tool. Essentially, what the mood meter says is that how we feel at any given moment of the day is a product of two dimensions, pleasantness and energy. So pleasantness has to do with, like right now, all of you are sitting in a seat at around 7:10 p.m. hearing some guy from Connecticut talk about feelings. That has to evoke feelings. Some of you are like, oh my gosh, the opportunity, finally someone cares about my feelings. And some of you are like, I've been forced to be here. So -5 would mean that psychologically speaking, this is not really resonating with you. You're like, I don't even think I like Mark. -3, I would call that everyday misery. It's like you wake up in the morning and you look at your significant other like, and then you go to work and you're like, and then you come home and you're like, what am I doing? 0 would be just plain old neutral. +3, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, talking about feelings. And +5, you have no words. Like, this is the moment of your life. Clearly, no one is feeling that way. That was just a signal. You better work harder tonight, Mark. But more seriously, where are you this evening? Just right here. It's in your brain. It's kind of the way you're just thinking about life right now. Approach this presentation, avoid this presentation. Well, it'll be the other way around, actually. Everybody has a number? Okay. On the y-axis, it says the word energy. Energy is literally your activation levels right now. Like, what does your body feel like? Does your body feel alive? Do you feel pumped? Or do you feel completely tired, depleted, like you just would do anything to go home, go to bed, and pull the covers over your head? So what's your energy like right now? Got a number there? All right, you're doing well. You cross your axes and you create your medidor emocional, your mood meter. We got 4 quadrants. We got yellow, red, blue, and green. So let me get a quick check-in. Yellow people, how many of you are feeling high energy and pleasant? Okay, green people, pleasant but lower in energy. Anybody having a blue or red day? Nobody. Like, that's biologically impossible. There's no one here feeling a little sad or down or a little ajaga. Maybe I'm the only one. Think about that for a minute. What does that tell us about our comfort level being authentic about how we feel? It's like there's something weird about red and blue. And a lot of people do feel that way. They see that left side of the mood meter as the bad stuff. Those are the bad emotions, and the yellow and green are the good emotions. So lesson number 1, there is no such thing as a bad emotion. On the count of 1, you're going to repeat that. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
There's no such thing as bad emotion.
You're good learners. And I'm saying that with conviction. Most of us have been brought up to think that anger, anxiety, sadness, despair, those are bad things to feel. They're not, it's called life. And one of the misconceptions about social and emotional learning is that we're trying to avoid kids from having those feelings. I don't believe that's the right way to do the work. I think we have to learn how to be with those feelings to get through life. We have to learn how to be uncomfortable with ourselves and with other people. That's the only way we can grow. And if we protect kids from not feeling, how are they going to thrive and survive when they get older and they're in the real world? It makes no sense. So avoiding unpleasant emotions is never helpful. I hope that makes sense. It doesn't mean we're going to throw them into the gauntlet. It doesn't mean like, good luck, kiddo. No. Children in school in particular deserve to be in a psychologically and physically safe place. That doesn't mean they're not going to be anxious or overwhelmed or sad or disappointed or left out. That's just everyday emotions. Okay, now let's go back to how you're feeling. We got X and Y axis, we got 4 quadrants, you raise your hands for what color you're in, but we can't walk around like the school. Actually, I'm having a flashback. One of the superintendents I work with on Long Island, New York, he's like, Mark, our test scores are going to go down because of your program. I'm like, what are you talking about, Ed? He's like, everybody's just walking around saying yellow, red, blue, green. I'm like, you didn't follow through with the work. We have to move beyond the quadrant and get to the specific feeling word. We need language. We got to be precise with our language. So, how are you feeling tonight? You got 3 seconds to find the precise feeling word. 3, 2, 1, freeze. All right, let's have some real honesty in the house. How many of you had some trouble finding the word? Hands up high. Okay, about 50% of you. What are your hypotheses around that? I mean, all of you are educated people, many of you leading thousands of people. But I just say, how are you feeling? And it's like, fine. Okay. This is the audience participation part, right? I've been taught to be still.
I think emotions change from hour to hour, day to day.
They do. You're 100% right. But I just want to know how you're feeling right now. Content. Nice word. What are your thoughts about why it's difficult to label emotions? One is that they change a lot. What else?
I think there's too many at one time to bring it down to one word for me.
Okay. Like how many?
Like how many am I feeling?
Yeah.
No less than 5.
Okay. 7 or more, we're going to walk you out.
It's also definition.
Definitions. Say more.
Just because content, how does one define content?
Yes.
So you did not give a list of words to choose from.
No.
Which made it challenging for maybe for some.
So you basically want me to walk around with my little poster that's like, how are you feeling? And then you get to be like, oh, let me look for 10 minutes and figure out the word that best describes how I'm feeling. Well, like, are you going to do that at work? You're gonna be like, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Remind me of your first name? Judith, how are you feeling? Oh, wait. Sorry, Mark. I need a couple minutes. We don't have time for that. So that means what? What are you basically saying, Judith?
Yeah, I heard the hums.
What you're saying, I'm going to just tell you what you're saying, is that you never learned the words and their definitions when you were younger. So it's not readily available to you because you didn't learn the words. I mean, how many of us were really taught specific emotion words, like the psychological difference between down, disappointment, devastated, hopeless, despair, calm, content, tranquil, peaceful, relaxed, happy, excited, elated, jubilant, whatever. I never learned those words. I learned to say, Someone else I have their hand up.
The word was engaged. You make me feel engaged.
Thank you. You get an A in my class. But let's go back to the reason why we struggle with the words. One is that Judith is like, I never was taught the vocabulary and the definitions. We have multiple feelings at once. It's hard to pinpoint how you're feeling when you're feeling 3 or 4 at a time, which is, by the way, being human. They're fleeting. They're going, they're coming and going. Any other hypotheses? Yeah.
We don't tell people that. They just don't pay them more time.
Wait, we use a very limited vocabulary?
I think even for myself and for kids, they don't want to feel labeled. They get afraid
Interesting.
to say something that they're going to be labeled as that feeling forever.
Yeah.
When we know we change sometimes adults.
But people feel like it's a permanent part of their identity. I get that a lot. Like I've been on this tour, and I think I've given 75 presentations in the last 3 weeks. And I was visiting a bunch of high schools in other states. And I was working with the kids themselves, and they said, I don't just feel anxious, I am anxious. which is a whole other thing that we have to deal with. When you identify, there's a whole body that's one feeling. But you're right, a lot of people do feel that way these days. Okay, we don't have the words. We're like, if I don't want to share that I'm feeling as a guy, right? You ask, first ask me how I'm feeling.
How are you feeling?
Fine. I mean, that's what you mostly do. Sir, ask me how I'm feeling. Well, honestly, I've been with Bonnie for 2 days. Bonnie. I forgot her name right now. I've been with Lonnie for 2 days. I feel discombobulated. Scott makes me feel, I'm excited to work with him. He's a good guy. But I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm a little bloated for lunch. I had like so much acid. And then I had an extra cup of coffee because I wanted to be awake for tonight, but it's like, and then I've got a lot, I'm going to fly home tomorrow, I got stuff in the afternoon. I don't know, I'm like all over the place. Yeah, thanks for your empathy. Now, that's going back to your point over there, right? We are complicated people. Let's be real. And I think a lot of the reasons why we don't talk about emotions is that we don't share it because we don't think that the people we share it with are going to listen. We don't think they're going to be there to support us. And maybe they don't have the skills to help us deal with, especially those negative or what we call unpleasant emotions. All right, so we're here for an hour or so. I'm already feeling the need to stay longer, but it's okay. And we're going to have to focus. How many of you believe that it's important for children to focus? Raise your hand. Yeah, like you're my students right now because I'm the one on stage. I want you to focus. Okay, I want you to pay attention. Eye contact. I want you to be engaged. How many of you will have a struggle with that at some point during my talk? Raise your hand. Great, everybody. Okay. I said this earlier, Scott, like we're not doing well in this district. It's the district of emotionally bankrupt and attention deficit disordered educators and leaders. It's great. Now I know why you invited me. So what's your strategy? I mean, again, I want to remind you, you're only here, you're adults who should have a lot of training in how to focus, because you're adults. You're adults. You're asking your kindergartner, 3rd grader, 8th grader, 7th grader, 12th grader to go to school at 7:30 in the morning, stay there till 4 o'clock and then do after school stuff, and you want them to be engaged all day long in learning and focusing. Am I right? Yes, that's what you do. You go to school and you focus. And I can't get you to focus for an hour. So what's your strategy? Lori?
I usually write things down.
You're going to take notes. Okay. Others? We have a note taker in the front row.
Chopper.
I always thought there's a trick when they're losing focus to repeat in your head exactly word for word what they're saying.
Okay. So you're going to just say everything I say over and over. Great. If that works for you. So she's going to repeat everything I say in her head. You're going to take notes.
I'm not going to do it, but you can take a break.
But you're not going to, why are you telling me something you're not going to do? I could regulate, but I'm choosing not to. Thank you. All right, but what are you going to do now, today, here, now, when you get distracted, when you get hungry, when you think, oh my God, I got to check my text messages. Oh my God, I got this to do tomorrow. How do you? You're going to stretch. You're just going to do yoga. All right, you're going to stretch? Are you? So you're not going to take breaks, you're not going to stretch. You're just going to talk about them. What are you going to do? I'm pushing you, Vicki. You're going to breathe. Just breathe. We're going to breathe. So we're going to breathe. We're going to take notes.
I'm really going to focus.
It's like I'm determined now. But I mean, how many of you have your own children? Anybody here? And how many of you ever just said to your child, I need you to focus? And it's like, oh. This reminds me, by the way, I work at Yale University in Connecticut, but I live now in New York City. And so I have to take a train for an hour and a half when I go into the office. And long story short is I'm on the train, literally on the train, and getting in Manhattan. And there's a woman and her daughter next to me. And the daughter was not the best in terms of her behavior. So the mom was getting upset. And the first thing the mom said, she goes, honey, train behavior. And I was like, okay, this is going to be good. So, of course, the kid is sitting, and then the kid gets up and says, honey, I said train behavior. And then, now we're like we're entering into Connecticut, and the kid gets up again, and the mother says, look at me, train behavior. And now like the face gets, you know when you get that face that's like, train. Kid got up again, and it was like this whole, like every 5 seconds, it was like, sit, look at me, train behavior. And I'm just sitting there like next to this mom thinking like, all right, I'm the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence. And honestly, the only thing I could think of was to write a note. And I was going to hand it to the kid and say something like, run away now. Because I was just imagining this kid's life. Right? Like, but how many of you have ever gotten caught in that? It's amazing, isn't it? And so the work that we do has to start with the adults. You have to have the skills. You have to have the language before you can help your kids with that. So what does that look like? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. I think very importantly, you should all have what I call the why. Because there is a why to this work. And it's not my opinion. The why is that emotions matter for everything. Everything. How you're feeling right now in this presentation is driving your attention. If you are overwhelmed by something that's personal or professional, if you are feeling tired or bored, your brain is going to go to the strongest emotion that you're feeling in the moment. Does that make sense to everybody? Because that's what your emotion system is designed to do. It's designed to make you aware of what's happening in your environment. That's why we have emotions. It's why when we feel fear, we back up. Because it's saying there's an immediate danger that I need to back away from. It's why when we're on vacation and we're feeling joyful and content, we're not worrying about anything. Because our emotion system is saying, everything is safe. Everything's okay. I am enough. When we feel stressed, and we have too many demands and not enough resources, we're trying to solve the problem. Do you see how emotions drive your attentional capacity? If you don't know how to deal with your emotions, sometimes those emotions have power over you. How many of you can give an example from your own life, or not give it, think of one, where your emotions got the best of you? Can everyone raise your hand if you have an example you can think of where your emotions had the power over you instead of you having the power over them? It happens all the time. We say things we regret, we do things we don't want to do. It's never ending. But when we're emotionally intelligent, the definition of emotional intelligence, the simplest one of all, is learning how to use all of our emotions wisely to achieve our goals. I'm going to say it again. Learning how to use all of our feelings wisely. The good, the bad, the ugly ones. The happy, the sad, the anger, the frustration, the overwhelm. We use those emotions to achieve the goals we want. Okay? The second is decision making. Here's an interesting study. At least I think it's interesting because I did it. So I do research in schools. And I did a study where I took educators, teachers themselves. And here's what I did. I said, think about a good day and write about it. Think about a really rough day. Write about it. Simple. Good day, bad day. We randomly assign. That's how you do experimental design. Good day, bad day, good day, bad day, good day, bad day, good day. Everybody just wrote, that was the worst day of my life. I hate teaching that day. Oh my God, I love that day that I did this. Then immediately thereafter, they all got the same essay to grade. And my research question was, would how teachers felt influence the way they evaluated the same exact essay? What do you think? Raise your hand if you think it did. Okay. That's because I'm presenting right now. Because, firstly, it did. 1 to 2 full grades difference. But what did you just agree to? Reflect on that for a minute. You just agreed that your emotions drive your behavior. Do you realize that? You just said, yes, of course. I'm in a bad mood, you fail. That's not objectively verifiable grading. That's saying emotions are influencing the way I see the world and the judgments and decisions I make. Which, by the way, is true. But when you're emotionally intelligent, you notice those things. You say to yourself, oh, right now, I'm in a really, really weird mood, and I'm not going to make that choice right now. I'm going to postpone that choice. I'm going to realize that I'm angry at that, not at that. I'm feeling overwhelmed, but it's not about this kid's paper. It's about my life. I'm not going to project that emotion onto that kid's work. That takes skill. Would you agree? It takes a high degree of self-awareness and self-regulation. So what we found in the research, just to let you know, 1 to 2 full grade difference. But here's the kicker. At the end of the study, when the teachers were leaving, we're like, by the way, do you believe that how you felt had any influence over the grade? 90% denied it. So the real message of the study is that how we feel influences our behavior, but it happens how? Outside of conscious awareness. That's the piece that we have to be aware of. That we're making these judgments and we're not even conscious of it based on our emotion states. What emotional intelligence does is it helps you to make the unconscious conscious so you can be more deliberate in your decision making. The third is relationship quality. Has anyone here ever lived with or worked with someone who is very, very, very difficult? Anyone? I can't help myself. Anybody ever live with or work with someone who's very difficult? Okay. So, I have a relative who is difficult. Really difficult. For a while, when I worked at the University of New Hampshire for a while, and I didn't really know why I was there, but I did it, and I didn't want to live in the town, so I got a house in this little town in Maine, the weirdest little town, but it was fun. And I had a winter rental because I was poor, and so the rich people had this big house on the water. They didn't want to live there between September and May, and so I took care of the house and got this beautiful house for $400 a month. So I invited friends and relatives, everybody comes to the big fancy house. We'd freeze to death. I couldn't afford the heating bill, so I would sleep with an electric blanket on. Anyhow, I had this relative who came up, and there was a little bakery in town, the cutest little bakery, and they had the best coffee, the best scones. And I would go there, and just like my thing, it was like this ritual, like my scone and my coffee. And so my relative comes, and I said, I don't know if I could ever go back to New York. Like, everybody's so nice here. You ask for a refill, and like, definitely. It's like, and she looks at me and she goes, it's nice here, Mark, but there's an underlying anger. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm looking at it. Like, you're projecting, like, it's really nice here. People are nice here. That kind of energy, I don't know if you haven't ever worked with someone like that. It's toxic. It makes you not want to go to work. It makes you not want to kind of be with people. What people don't realize is that it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because over time, you start not wanting to be around them, and they get resentful for that. Emotions drive the quality of our relationships. Our facial expressions, our body language, our vocal tones send signals. Approach, avoid. It's that simple. The fourth is physical and mental health. I don't know about you, but the data that I have seen and the data that I've collected are showing that over the last 20 years, the mental health of our society has been diminishing. It's getting worse and worse and worse. Some people say it's overdiagnosis. Tiny piece of it is overdiagnosis. The truth is, the kids are not okay. And the adults who are raising and teaching them are not feeling so great either. And so, here's the deal. You have little emotions that become big emotions. If you don't know how to deal with the little ones, they become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Finally, performance. So I'm in a weird place just because I grew up with parents who were blue-collar workers, meaning my parents did not have, neither one of my parents graduated college. Actually, neither one of them graduated high school. My father was an air conditioning repairman, trying to make ends meet. My mother had various jobs. And now I work at Yale, where I was joking earlier this afternoon, like, my students like, Professor Brackett, I have a question, but I'm not really sure you know the answer. I'm like, really? Like, I joke about that research about good mood, bad mood. I always say, like, I may not know the answer, but I'm going to grade your paper. Anyhow, my point is that I had an assumption when I became a professor at the university. I had such imposter syndrome. It was like I just couldn't relate to their lives. Like, they went out for lunch. Like, you go out for lunch? I don't even go out for lunch. Like, I make my sandwich. And they travel to countries that I never knew existed. They have CVs that blow your mind. They play 17 instruments. They have nonprofits they started in elementary school. I mean, it's crazy. And so, anyhow, I assumed that because they had the highest SAT scores and grade point averages and all these amazing CVs, that they were going to be enormously successful post-graduation. I spent 23 years now studying students at my university. Many of them, even at that level, do not achieve their dreams. It's not because they can't do it. They're cognitively very capable. It's because they don't have the emotion skills they need to navigate their lives. They can't deal with feedback. They crumble at a certain point when they're getting harsh feedback. They just can't deal with it. Like, I'm smart. What do you mean you're giving me feedback? I'm like, well, you're not as smart as I am about this. They don't like that. They don't do well with the anxiety. They come in, the thing about anxiety is interesting. You can get through, you can push and push and push, but at a certain point, it hits you. And if you don't have the skills to deal with it, you start crumbling. Having a rich imagination doesn't mean you're creative. It means you got a lot of great ideas. Having great ideas does not mean you're creative. Creativity comes from the ability to achieve the creativity, to be able to finish the thing, to be able to complete the product. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, good. So how many of you believe that emotions matter? You're good. How many of you believe that how you deal with your feelings really matters? Yeah. Okay. So, I spent 15 years of my life once I got my position as kind of opening the center and doing all this stuff, I was running around the world teaching skills. How to recognize and label feelings and regulate them. And I got a lot of resistance. It's like unbelievable. Like, how could you resist this? I would go to, I remember my first trip, I got invited to this very famous school in London. It's actually where the royal family sends their kids. It was one of those moments, and I was right like this. I was giving a presentation, and this one teacher just stood up, and she looks at me, and she goes, my job is not to talk to my students about feelings. And she just walked out. And I looked at the room like, welcome. Like, what do I do now? And I'll never forget, there was another teacher in the room, and he stood up, he's like, can I say something, sir? And I said, sure. He goes, I just want to let you know something. I'm a teacher here now, but I was a student here back in the day, and I'm sorry, but she was actually my teacher. And I was like, okay, this is going too far. I need to move on. But I found that over and over and over again, this like strong resistance. And I do a lot of corporate presentations. One of my favorites, I was with a Fortune 100 company in New York City, gorgeous office, glass office on the Hudson River. I'm giving a speech. I go into the C-suite at the end with the big boss, and he looks at me, he's like, pretty good talk. I'm like, thanks. And he's like, I think my people could use some of your training, but it's not for me. Right? And I said, tell me more. He's like, look at my office. So the funny thing about that is that before I met with the big boss, I interviewed the senior leadership team. They hate him, okay? Nobody wants to work with someone who is that. These people are everywhere. I'll give you another example. So at Yale, I work in the medical school. The dean of the medical school asked me to give a speech to a big department. Okay? Not a problem. I'm doing you a favor. I do my speech to all these medical doctors. And at the end, I say, any questions? Can't make this up. This one doctor, and it was like posturing like you've never seen before. And he gets up and he goes, what happened to Yale? That's what he said to me. So I took my breath. And he goes, Mark, we produce Nobel laureates, not nice people. Seriously. I'm like, what is happening here right now? Now I have a group facilitation training. I'm like, you need to sit down. I didn't say that. What I did say was, does anyone else have a different perspective on my presentation? You're not going to believe this. Another one of these medical doctors said to me, goes, here's what I learned, Mark. Sometimes you have to be because then the people who report you just shut up and do what you tell them to do. I was blown away by this. So I look at the dean who is sitting like in the front, who is about to have us crying hysterical because of embarrassment. And I said, are we making a movie? Like, what's happening here right now? And she looks at me, she's like, respectfully, Mark, this is why I asked you to come give this speech. I'm just sharing these examples with you because there are people like this in our world. And it's because they didn't have an emotion education. They don't get the value. They don't have the value proposition is not there. We have to give them that value proposition. This is my money slide. I use this slide because this is the data. In my first book, Permission to Feel, this chapter has 800 scholarly references. 800. The publisher was like, I don't think we can dedicate 25 pages of scholarly references in the appendix just for one chapter. I'm like, I don't care. This is where people start giving me that, I don't want to do this. It's not important. I don't get it. There's nothing to argue. I have 50 studies for every single area. Okay. So, point is, there was resistance. And I'm like, what is this missing piece? And I had an epiphany. And it was the concept that I wrote about earlier in my life, which is permission to feel. That we don't give people the permission to have their feelings. We don't give ourselves permission to feel. So just very briefly, I am 56 years old. I live mostly in Connecticut, where I am a professor at Yale. I had two parents who loved me more than anything in the whole world. They did not go to the School of Emotional Intelligence, however. So when I was being bullied, my mother would say things, don't worry, honey, don't worry, your mother loves you. I'm like, okay. I'm going to tell the bullies in the bathroom my mother loves me. I'm not sure that's going to go over so well. And my father was like, son, you're toughen up. You're toughen up. Look at me. I mean, I can have better posture, but nevertheless, I'm not a tough guy. We call that toxic masculinity these days, which my father was in that mindset. I share that with you because I want to share something a little bit more personal, which is that I have two brothers, both of whom are amazing friends of mine, and I love my brothers. They're 7 and 11 years older than I am. But when I was 5 years old, my one brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was psychiatrically hospitalized. He never came home. My eldest brother was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and he had terrible intestinal problems, and he had to drop out of college and had to deal with all of his health issues. And here I was, little Mark, 5 years old, just like at home with both of his brothers gone, my parents not doing well financially, freaking out about their other sons who were not doing so well. and my mother was fighting to get the system to help her son get the supports he needed because we couldn't afford the expensive treatments to deal with that in the treatment centers. And unfortunately, the person that they had, who they didn't pay, it was just a neighbor to help take care of me, was a pedophile. And so I was abused by my parents' best friend for 5 years. And I never told anybody about it because of reasons I still don't know. Just don't know. But I know I didn't disclose it for 5 years. And of course, I suffered a lot during those times. When I was 11 years old, my mother had a brother whose name was Uncle Marvin. Uncle Marvin happened to be a middle school teacher in the Catskill Mountains of New York State and a trumpet player by night. He was remember that movie Dead Poets Society? He was kind of like that character. Amazing human being. By some wave of a magic wand, Uncle Marvin was writing a curriculum to teach kids about feelings through history. He was a teacher in a rural area of New York State back in the day where his kids, his students, were milking cows at 5 o'clock in the morning and then coming into his 6th grade social studies class, and he'd have to teach them the Roman oligarchy. And it's like they have no interest, they have no, what does this even mean? An oligarchy, the Romans, they had no, they just had no framework for wanting to even learn that. And he said, well, what's going to make them feel engaged? I got to find a way to make it relevant and meaningful to their lives. So he found ways of taking the history book and what are the emotions that the characters were feeling? What were the experience they were feeling? And then he'd get the students to share about their everyday experiences with those feelings and then relate them to the curriculum. He had tremendous success in his one classroom. But he also ended up staying with us one summer because he was going for his graduate degree very close to my hometown. And we'd sit in the backyard and he'd interview me about these feeling words. He'd say, Mark, let's talk about the word elated. What do you think that means? I'd say, I don't know. Well, what's elation? What's that between elation and excitement? I don't know. And then we'd have this conversation about excitement is anticipatory and elation is you feel this joy and accomplishment after something. So let's talk about our stories around excitement and elation. And it was fun. And then he'd say, let's talk about alienation. I'm like, I could talk about that all day long. Anyhow, we started having these rich conversations about emotions. And it was my uncle that I finally shared what was happening. Not my parents, but my uncle. And he didn't say toughen up or oh my gosh. He said, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through this. I share that with you because I argue, and I think it's pretty clear, that he was a unique adult. He created the conditions for me to be who I was without judgment. Now, that's I wrote about that in the opening of my first book as a kind of why I think that we have to give ourselves and everyone that we love, and even the people we don't love that much, everybody gets permission to feel. But I didn't have any scientific data on it. So now I have spent the last 5 years running around the world doing studies with thousands of people. And I ask people a simple question I'm going to ask you right now. And I want to set a caveat out there. I just shared with you something quite personal. I'm also 56 years old, and I'm in the most healthy I've ever been psychologically in my life. Not everybody's ready to do that kind of stuff. I am at a different place in my life now. I feel like if I can't be open and authentic about my experience, and I don't have the right to be here. I recognize that I also have an extreme experience, and I'm hopeful that many of you have not had that extreme experience. But all of you grew up in a family. All of you had parents that displayed emotions in interesting ways. Maybe you could even think about if I were to ask you to create a movie title for what you saw around emotions growing up in your household. When your parents argued, what did it look like? When you were feeling sad or angry or lonely, how was it dealt with? If you were to just create a title for the movie that would describe your emotional development and your experiences growing up in your home. Anybody have a good title? Yes.
Let's fix this.
Let's fix this. Nice. Other titles. Anyone else? Sammy, we're still. I haven't opened you up enough. Yes.
Men don't cry.
Men don't cry.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about
It was interesting.
it. It was interesting. I want to go deeper on that one. That interesting word, I think, has other adjectives to describe it. What else? Yes.
Just be happy.
Just be happy.
Tupperware.
Tupperware. That's a fun one. What is that? You just like put your feelings in the Tupperware,
And clamp it down.
seal it, and clamp it down.
Maybe a little out.
Maybe a little.
Just a little.
Now, I'm just doing this as a little fun activity, but it does make you think about like what the environment was like around emotion. The bigger question I have in my research is, do you feel that when you were a child, you had permission to feel? Could you be your true self? Could you share whatever you were feeling with someone, anyone, a parent, an aunt, an uncle, a grandmother, a teacher, anyone? So here's what my research shows. Only 35% of people in America say yes, and 65% of people say no. So 65% of people say, I really don't have anybody to talk to about my feelings. Now, you might wonder, who are these people? Of the 35%, half of them say it was their mom. Only 3% say it was their dad. And people say other things like aunt, uncle, coach, pastor, someone else. Now, my big study has been on the characteristics of these people. And what I found is that there are three. These people are non-judgmental, empathic, and good listeners. So I want you to just take a moment and think about that. If you're a parent in this room, do you think that your kid would say that you're the person who gives them permission to feel? Do you think your child thinks of you as being the non-judgmental, good listening, empathetic person? Sorry to do this to you. But it's the only way we learn is by reflecting. So a couple of things about this. One is, some people get very uncomfortable with this, by the way. My job is not to be my son's Uncle Marvin. I'm like, well, okay, why not? So you have to be judgmental, not listen. I'm not sure I'm buying into this whole thing. Now, here's the other thing, is that people wonder, does it predict anything? Does it matter? And guess what? It does. What my research shows is that if you had an Uncle Marvin or an Aunt Maria or a parent or a coach who gave you permission to feel, as an adult, you have higher emotional intelligence. That's interesting. As an adult, you have better mental health, better physical health. You actually sleep better at night. As an adult, you have 10 to 50% greater purpose and meaning in life. That's a lot. One factor is that you had someone who you could talk to about your emotions, and as an adult, it predicts your purpose and meaning in life. That's pretty powerful. Now, one of my challenges is that I do a lot of speaking, and sometimes I invite friends to come to these talks. And I invited one of my best friends to come hear me speak in New York City a while ago. And he looks at these data, we're driving back home, and he's like, dude, I hated that presentation. I'm like, you hated my talk? Everybody else gave me a round of applause. He's like, I now realize, I think the reason why I don't have purpose and meaning is I didn't have an Uncle Marvin, and I'm freaking out about this now, and I feel terrible about this. And I said, thank you for sharing that. But more importantly, a couple of things. The only way is forward. You can't go back. So at some point in life, you have to give yourself permission to feel. You got to look in that mirror and say, I'm not going to judge what I see in that mirror anymore. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to listen to myself more. I'm going to have some self-compassion, some empathy for myself. The second thing is more powerful. It comes from another little anecdote. So I'm giving a speech in Westchester, New York, and just like this. And all of a sudden this guy's like, are you talking about Marvin Moore, the 6th grade social studies teacher from Monticello, New York? I said, I am. He's like, Mark, you're not going to believe this. Your uncle was my Uncle Marvin. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, 50 years ago, I had your uncle as a 6th grade social studies teacher. And I will never, ever forget him. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, the whole feelings thing. We talked about feelings, we go to history, go back to feelings, his facial expression, the twinkle in his eyes. He's like, it was the most remarkable class I ever took. And I said, but that was, you were only 12 years old. He's like, I remember everything about that class. He was one of those remarkable educators. And so he looks at me and he goes, clearly your uncle had a profound influence on your career and your life. So dedicate everything to him. And then he looks at me and goes, well, I'm just curious. For whom were you an Uncle Marvin? And I'm like, I'd like to do the research. And it was very eye-opening for me that I was not paying it forward. I was not showing up for the people in my life as the non-judgmental, good listener who showed empathy and compassion. It was a real wake-up call for me. Then I started doing research on that. And guess what? Even if you didn't have an Uncle Marvin, but you show up as an Uncle Marvin for other people, 2 things happen. 1, you change people's lives. They benefit. You can see it in their facial expressions when you show up for them like this. And what the research shows is a reciprocal dynamic effect on your well-being. Because when you watch your behavior shifting other people's behavior for the positive, you feel better about it. And guess what? Something even more powerful than that. When you do it in public, like as a leader of a school, and the people witness you behaving that way towards other people, they benefit. Okay, so we're only 1 hour away from the end of my presentation. I spent a long time on this, but it's important. So you have to set a goal now. Sorry, gotta set goals in these presentations. You're leaving here at some point soon, and you're gonna go home, and you're gonna go to work tomorrow. A little self-evaluation. Which one of these 3 things are you gonna work on? I'm gonna try to be less judgmental of my kids and my family. I'm gonna listen more. I want to have more compassion and empathy. What does that look like for you? People ask me like, well, SEL is so much work. It's a lot of work. Of course it is. It's new. It's a new set of skills. But think about it. How many of you believe as a parent that you could probably become 10% more non-judgmental, empathetic, and a good listener? Raise your hand if that's possible. Raise your hand if you think if you're a school person, if you think the culture and climate of your school would be slightly better if all the educators and the adults who are working with kids were 10% less judgmental, 10% better listeners, and 10% more empathic. Yeah. These are things that are workable, work-onable. So much work. So then there's the skills. You got to develop the skills. So we have the mindset shift. I'm going to be a person who gives other people permission to feel. I'm going to give myself permission to feel. I recognize that there are no bad emotions. And now I'm going to work on becoming better at understanding emotions and managing them effectively. So I'm transitioning now. And I joked about this earlier. But the wake-up call for me in terms of dealing with my own emotions was during the pandemic when I struggled deeply managing my own emotions. I just did not think I was going to struggle with the isolation. I thought, I got strategies. I had my mother-in-law moved in, was not by choice, did not do very well with that. I worked from home, did not do very well with that. Family was just all over the place. It just was really tough. And it was at that point in time I realized since I was failing at dealing with my own emotions, like I can't be the only one. And I'm supposed to be an expert. So I did more research and more. I studied about 20,000 people across the world, and I asked them, what emotions are you struggling with? What are you struggling with in terms of managing feelings? What would you have liked to have learned about how to deal with your feelings? And what I found was that most people were not regulating very well. There was a lot of avoidance of emotion. There was a lot of overeating and undereating. There was a lot of alcohol, suppression, overthinking, doom scrolling, watching movies until you were in oblivion, ruminating, smoking, venting, procrastinating. Just for curiosity, does anyone use any of these strategies here? Or are people in Buffalo Grove like nobody else? And maybe if you're in education or you're a parent, these strategies look familiar to you? For the kids? So you might wonder, what is this thing called emotion regulation? The big goal of emotion regulation is to move from automatic, habitual, mostly outside of awareness ways of dealing with our feelings to more conscious and deliberate and helpful ways of dealing with our feelings. And so what does that mean? It means that we have to learn how to think differently and how to behave differently. So the thoughts and actions we use to prevent unwanted emotions, reduce the difficult ones, initiate the ones that could be helpful, maintain the ones that could be helpful, enhance the ones that can be helpful, with the goal that we're doing this to make better decisions, have better well-being, build and maintain positive relationships, and attain goals. We're regulating for a reason. It's a goal-oriented phenomenon. And so, in the books that you were able to get gratis, thank you, Van, you have a chapter on every one of these strategies. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time tonight teaching you these strategies because you're going to get to read about them and learn them and practice them for the rest of your lives. But I am here to tell you that every one of these strategies, just like that, remember that money slide where I had 800 references? Well, I got 8,000 references for this one. There is not a strategy in that list that is not backed by endless amounts of research. So I'll walk you through them and then we'll wrap up for the day. The first is you got to give yourself and everyone else permission to feel. There are no bad emotions. You got to shift your mindsets. The second is you got to build your vocabulary. You got to know how you're feeling, Judith. Sorry. The third is you got to know how to quiet your mind and body. I have a phrase. You have to deactivate before you can regulate. If you can't lower your emotional temperature, you're going to say the things that you regret. You're going to do the things you don't want to do. If you can notice that you're having a strong feeling and put the pause button on and step back and take that breath, take that second breath, move yourself from the situation, you will be able to then choose the next strategy, which is redirecting your thinking. The cognitive strategies that we need. I have a niece who I spoke about once in the last couple of days. Her name is Esme. She is the love of my life. She's my Uncle Marvin's daughter's daughter. She's not my actual niece. She's my cousin removed or whatever the heck that is. She's my niece. I grew up with her, meaning she grew up with me being her Uncle Mark. She's adopted from Guatemala, and I went with her mom when she was adopted to help bring her home. So I have a very close relationship with Esme. She's dark-skinned, obviously, because she's Guatemalan. Her mom is not dark-skinned because she's a white woman with actually red hair. They were living in upstate New York. And in kindergarten, Esme was terribly bullied. Some girl went up to her in kindergarten and said, "You're a different color than your mother. That's disgusting." So her mother, who is not known for her regulation skills, calls me and is like, "Mark, I'm getting in my truck and I'm running over that kid and their mother." And I'm like, take a deep breath, deactivate. But the real truth was I did a road trip to upstate New York to be helpful because I wanted to be the Uncle Marvin. I'm not going to go through the whole story with you, but I'm just going to let you know that it took a while to help my niece who was who was 5. She didn't want to go back to school. She started having school refusal. She started questioning her adoption every single day. She started questioning about her skin color. She started questioning all of these things about herself. And it was all in the sense of, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. And it breaks my heart to think that this little girl, had to go through that. It breaks my heart to know that most kids don't have Uncle Marvins. And so kids go through these experiences where people are mean and hurtful to them, and they're stuck with those feelings. And they have no place to go with those feelings. They don't know what to do with those feelings. They don't have someone coaching them to say, Esme, look, your family is people of diverse backgrounds. My brother's married to someone from Mexico. My spouse is from Panama. So we have a family that is multicolored. We love people of all skin shades in our family. You can see that right here. And Esme, guess what? No one has the right to tell you who you are. That was the hard one. Talking to a 5-year-old, telling her that she was the victim of gaslighting, because that's when gaslighting starts. Starts that early. Other people believe they have the right to define your reality for you. And then without any intervention, you start believing it. I mean, I'm just being real with you. This is how it happens. Our negative self-talk is created for us. You're not born that way. You're not born being a self-critic. It's other people believe they have the right to define you, and then there's no intervention, and you start believing it. We have to teach kids how to have positive self-talk, how to reframe, how not to believe the things they hear all the time. The next is we need emotional allies. You can't worry alone. No one should have to worry alone. Why? Does it make you tougher? Sometimes you're spiraling. You need social support. We need people to help us think through these things and give us perspective. The next thing we need to take care of ourselves. You cannot regulate if you're not well rested. You cannot regulate if you don't have the right nutrition. You cannot regulate if you don't get physical activity in. It is harder to regulate. It is easier to regulate when you take care of your body. And then finally, which we're going to end with tonight, is we have to figure out how to become the best versions of ourselves. What does that mean? Well, in Ruler, which is the name of our model, so Ruler is the program that I've created with a bunch of people at Yale that started with my uncle, that's now in 5,000 schools across the globe. We have a very complex implementation plan because we realize you got to get those school leaders on board, you got to build out your teams, you got to educate all faculty and staff, then you can introduce students and families, and then you can figure out sustainability and long-term plans. But it's got to start with the adults and then the kids, and you got to get families on the bus. Everybody has the language. So in schools that really take this serious, in districts that we work with, the superintendent, the bus driver, the kindergartner, everyone knows what a mood meter is. Everybody knows what a mood meter. I'm going to give you one example. I went to visit a school in Seattle, so all of Seattle schools works with us. And I walk into this one school. I had the greatest experience. And there's a woman there, because I came in after the school started. It was 15 minutes after the bell. And she says, who are you here to see? I'm here to see your principal. She didn't know who I was. And she goes, well, everybody who comes into our school, before they can go anywhere, they have to plot themselves in the mood meter. And I'm like, that's cool. What's that? And so she's, come on over. And she's like, we have yellow, red, blue, and green. So how are you feeling? I said, I'm in the yellow. And she goes, well, tell me why you're in the yellow. I said, well, I know a lot about this mood meter. And it's really cool that you do too. And I said, tell me, so how do you use this here? She goes, well, when kids come in late, they're flustered, they're overwhelmed, their parents, sometimes it's the parents' fault, sometimes it's the bus fault, sometimes they miss the bus, whatever it is. And they're coming in, we just send them right to class. But they're not ready for learning. This is an aid, by the way, not a teacher, a teacher aid. And I said, tell me more. She's like, well, we have them plot themselves in the mood meter. I have a little card that says yellow, red, blue, green, put a little check where they're feeling. And then we walk over to the strategy wall. And we help them find a strategy they can practice to help regulate their emotions while they're walking to class. And she goes, what do you think about that? I said, I think I love you. Like you, I didn't make that up. That was your invention. And that's the work. It's not a program. It's not a box. You can't do SEL in a box. It's got to be an approach that brings creativity to a school, so you make it your own. And so there are tons of tools. We have the charter, which helps people think about how they want to feel. This is Dawn DaCosta. Dawn is my former student, who I'm so proud of. She's now the deputy superintendent of all Harlem public schools. So she went from learning about this to bring it to her one school where she's a principal to now being responsible for dozens of schools across Harlem. And she's doing absolutely incredible work. And what I love about what she's doing is that she's built a culturally responsive lens in terms of integrating ruler with what it means to love Harlem and love your community. And she's using all relevant examples from that community to teach the skills of emotional intelligence. There are amazing examples of this in terms of using the tools. Those are classroom charters. And there's that mood meter. I can give you 3,000 examples where kids have plot their feelings throughout the day to see how their moods are affecting their grades. They can do literacy analyses of characters. They can do creative examples of art and technology. One school in Mexico made a mood meter football field. They went a little nuts. Then there's the meta moment technique, which we're going to end with. So one of the tools of ruler is called the meta moment. And it goes like this. Between stimulus and response, there is space. This is my taking from Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In that response lies our growth and freedom. What I've noticed in my 25 years of running around the world teaching this stuff, especially now, is that space is getting shorter and shorter and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. People have the shortest fuses I've ever seen. A friend of mine who owns a hair salon where I live, he sold his hair salon. He couldn't deal with the clients. Like, they're just yelling all the time and complaining all the time. And during COVID, they're like screaming. They didn't want to work with. I'm just done. It's like, I'm not going to regulate all my clients. It's incredible to me how many complaints we get from schools around dysregulation, from the adults and the kids. So, obviously, you'll read about this. I have 2 chapters on this tool in the book. But let me give you a little heads up. The third step says, see your best self. Everyone in here is a human being who has a relationship with somebody, because you're human. When my mother-in-law screamed at me one night, she yelled at me so badly, it was like gross. She was like, are you really the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence? And I just looked at her, I'm like, not tonight, lady. And then I went to bed, and I woke up in the morning, and I'm like, Mark, you are the director of the Center for Freaking Emotional Intelligence. Like, why were you your worst self? I had to analyze it. It's like, why did I get so triggered? Not cool. My point in telling you that is that I made a commitment to being my best self. Here I had an 81-year-old woman who's displaced from Panama, dying to go home, and I was just a terrible son-in-law. I had no interest in her. It's like, me, you're making my life miserable. Meanwhile, she didn't want to be with me either. But I wasn't thinking about her. I wasn't other-oriented. I was self-focused. So now I'm going to ask you to think about how you want to be seen and talked about and experienced tomorrow. How do you want to be seen and talked about and experienced tomorrow? When you show up as superintendent, when you show up as parent, a grandparent, friend, neighbor, dog owner, whatever it is. I would ask you to just take a moment and think about finish the sentence. I want to be seen and talked about and experienced as a person who has these qualities. What are those qualities?
Empathy.
Thank you.
Kindness.
Kindness,
Patience.
patience, empathy, kind, patient,
Other focus. Like
other-focused,
Good listener.
good listener,
Is a parent non-judgmental?
non-judgmental,
Supporter.
supportive, caring, loving, whatever it might be. It's not nasty, right? It's when you think about your values and you think about the person you want to be, it generally comes down to compassion and empathy and kindness and caring and supportive and patient. My point of doing that is that when we get activated, what happens is we tend to forget our values. They disappear. We go into survival mode. We go into all the things we learned when we were in kindergarten from our parents that were not so helpful. We don't pause to think about our values. What my research shows is that when you pause and take a breath and think about the person you want to be, you choose better strategies to regulate your emotions. You just do. Because your brain has been taken away from the trigger and you're going back to your ideal self. So Mark, when it says, Professor Brackett, I don't think you know the answer. Mark is like, you gotta be freaking kidding me, you entitled. Like I can go off on that shit, believe me, I can go off. And in my brain, I am saying things that I cannot say here. I'm like, you are done. But then when I pause and I'm like, Mark, remember, you're the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence. How would the director respond? The director is like the Yoda of emotional intelligence. Tell me more, kiddo. I'm just curious. What makes you think asking me that way is going to make me want to be helpful? You get very creative when you think about your best self. It's fun. Try it. So everyone, let's take a nice long inhale. And a nice long exhale. I have to end with one last little story though. So I'm in a school district where they do this work because that's what they do when you do our work. And I'm a scientist. I don't believe anything. And so these are just self-portraits of teachers talking about their best selves. And that's one kid in a school in 4th grade they do self-portraits that describe their best selves. That's what we do. We teach them how to do that. And he said his best self was kind, hardworking, determined, and selfless. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I didn't believe it. I just couldn't believe that a 4th grader would use the word selfless to describe his best self. So I go up to this kid and I say, hey, you, like that's you, obviously. I'm just curious, how did you come up with the word selfless? And he looks at me and goes, sir, I've determined that the world is becoming narcissistic. Okay. And he's like, I'm committing to be more selfless in my classroom. I'm like, thank you, sir. You can be my teacher. Don't underestimate kids' creativity. And what I want to say is that I'm not telling him who his best self should be. That's not my job. My job is to create the conditions for him to reflect on the self he wants to be. That's the goal of this work. So lastly, what we know from the research is that this makes a huge difference. It changes people's lives. And I wanted to give you some tools that you can use to wrap up. Number one is this free app that we built. It's called How We Feel. It's available in Android and iOS. It is respectfully an amazing app. I did it with the co-founder of Pinterest. And we made it available for free. He's created an endowment, so it will always be free. The second is, if you're a school that's interested in this work that you don't know about it, this is just a link to our website, and you can learn, and we have information sessions that go deeper into the implementation, science, and the training, so you can learn more about that. And then lastly, with the release of my book, I created this new podcast where I interview people like the singer Jewel. That is Dr. Alfie, who is one of the world's leaders on Black youth mental health. Amazing conversation with her. That's Duff McKagan, the bassist from Guns N' Roses. Jagger Keltner, who is an author who writes about awe. That's Dawn, the superintendent from New York. And you probably know Lisa DeMore and John Haidt and Angela Duckworth. Many, many episodes, so please check that out. All right, we're at the last slide. I know I'm late, I apologize, but I hope it's worth it. Last thing. Emotions matter, yes or no? Yes. I can't hear you.
Yes.
All right, not bad. It's a little more enthusiasm, but it's all right. How many of you believe that we need to give ourselves and everyone else permission to feel? Yes?
Yes.
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Good job. How many of you believe that it's never too early or too late to cultivate your emotional intelligence?
Yes.
Raise your hand. I promise you it's not. You may think it is, but it's not. Next, emotion regulation is 100% learned. I'm just telling you that. You don't have to say yes or no. I'm just telling you. Don't even raise your hand. I'm just telling you. It's 100% learned. For educators and parents, there's a whole piece of this work that I didn't talk about tonight in the book around co-regulation. Every one of these strategies you use for yourself, and you also help other people to use them too. The last thing, which is that best self that I asked you to think about. It is hard work, but it's worth it. I promise you. My final word. Oftentimes, people look at me and they say things, but Mark, you had your abuse, you were bullied, but look at you, you've made it, you're successful. And I am successful. I feel successful. I'm still a work in progress, but I feel successful. And I always say thank you, because I have to say thank you. It's a nice thing to say, but it makes me wonder what they're thinking. What are you thinking there? And I want to end by saying that I feel blessed in life. I had a very traumatic childhood. It did not go well for me. I did not like life. I had an eating disorder. I was clinically depressed. I was in bad shape. I am blessed that I had an adult in my life who created the conditions for me to understand my feelings and manage them effectively. I'm blessed that I got involved in the martial arts and became a martial arts instructor. I'm blessed that I figured out that I'm going to major in psychology and pull my uncle out of retirement and spend my life writing curriculum and teach kids about emotions and teach educators. I put a lot of effort into my well-being. I don't think every kid in our country is going to have that trajectory, which means that we, the adults who are raising and teaching kids, have to create conditions for them to develop their emotional intelligence. And I'll end with that. Thank you.